Hello, this is Eyewitness News. I'm Lindsay Dentlinger, and with me here in studio at Nasrec, day 3 of the ANC's 55th National Conference. It's also voting day, and just a short while ago, delegates went into their various commissions ahead of the voting. Is researcher and analyzer Mahlatsi Mahlatsi. Thank you for joining us. I'm sure we got a lot to talk about in the next few minutes. But let's start with what's happened overnight. We were all waiting to see who the nominations from the floor would be. And I suppose let's start with Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, a presidential candidate here in 2017. Last night she declined that nomination after tweeting just 2 days earlier that she was ready to stand. What do you make of her declining that nomination?
Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, Lindsay, has been a member of the ANC for a very long time, and I think more than anyone else, she understands the game of numbers in the ANC. She understands the dynamics of numbers, and I think she realized when she got here, and I think she probably must have realized even earlier on, but she realized specifically when she got here that she simply does not have the support. And this is very ironic, of course, because just in 2017, she's the only woman who's come as close as she ever did to becoming the president of the ANC. The margin between her and Cyril Ramaphosa at that time was less than 2,000, and that's not really very much, right? For someone who contested Cyril at the time when he was most popular, when he was absolutely well loved, and she had always been associated with the Jacob Zuma faction and so on. And so she had the odds were stacked much higher against her the last time, and yet she almost emerged victorious. And this time around, she barely had it. There was not a single province that nominated her towards this process.
So what's changed then, Malika? So much of who's here is the exact same as it was back then. So what has changed that she doesn't enjoy that support? And we saw her, if we can call a brave person, standing up in Parliament less than a week ago, going against the party line. Why do you think she doesn't have that support this time around?
So I think that in 2017, a lot of her support came at that time from people who supported President Jacob Zuma, the former President Jacob Zuma. And we've seen over the past 5 years that particular faction within the ANC, which is often called the RET forces, right, the Radical Economic Transformation Forces, has been dealt a very serious blow. One of the things, for example, that happened with that faction is that one of its faces was Ace Magashule, the Secretary General, who was suspended in 2021. But also a lot of the people who've been part of this RET, the faces of this RET, your Malusi Gigabas, your Tony Ngenis and so on, have really been held at the periphery within the ANC. And so I think that the kind of support that she had that would have enabled her to get into branches, to go to people, and to have a very strong lobby group, it just wasn't there. But also it's I think herself as well, within the ANC now. And I mean, of course there can also be a question of whether or not this is just rhetoric and nothing serious, but also, there's also been talks about generational mission, generational representation, bring in younger people within the ANC. Nkosazana is over the age of 70 herself. And of course this does not explain everything, because Cyril himself is 70 and Zweli Mkhize himself is 66. But I think that a lot of people are also feeling that Nkosazana, it's time. She's given as much as she can to the organization, and she's really got nothing left to give.
You made the point that she's the first woman in the movement to come as close as she did in 2017 to a top leadership position in the party. Let's just talk about the gender representation. We saw the Women's League ahead of this conference saying they're going to do more, they're going to try to do more, yet when women were nominated to these positions, they've stepped back, and it's almost as if women are being relegated to these deputy secretary general positions. What do you make of that?
So Lindsay, I think it's an indictment on the ANC itself and the ANC Women's League, that in this contest, so you had initially almost every position, there was a woman contesting in almost every position. In fact, in every position, because Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma was contesting in the president. You had Mamulo Kukubai, who was contesting the deputy president, but you've also had your Phoebe Potgieter, you had your Thandi Modisas, a lot of women. You've got Gwen Ramokgopa in TG. So almost all of these positions, there was always a woman contesting there, and not a single one of them emerged in terms of nominations, right? They did not garner enough nominations to even make it onto the ballot. And right now, yesterday or earlier this morning, we had women who were raised from the floor, right? And that happens, and of course, this happens also because the ANC yesterday adopted the amendment of its structure. So you've got now the top, so the NEC. So the top 7 is not a structure, but the NEC itself, you now have a top 7 as opposed to a top 6 to make accommodation for a second Deputy Secretary General. Now, the tragedy in all of this is that even initially, before this was adopted, the Deputy Secretary General position was the only position in which you had women contesting, but they were contesting each other. So you had Phoebe Potgieter and Nomvula Mokonyane contesting each other for the DSG position, right? And so even when they create a second Deputy Secretary General position, you also then have 2 women contesting each other. You've got Ramokgopa there, but you've also got Ronaldo Nalunga from Western Cape also contesting each other. Nowhere else do you see women contesting each other, or even being part of the people who've been nominated to contest. And I think that's a serious indictment on the ANC Women's League and the ANC, because even the political organizational report that we read yesterday, but as well as the political report that was delivered by President Cyril Ramaphosa on the first day of conference, all of them speak very eloquently about the need for gender representation, about the need for women and representation and all of that. And yet when it comes down to the wire, none of that is happening.
So the position of Deputy Secretary General, Nomvula Mokonyane versus Tina Joemat-Pettersson, what do you make of that race? Incidentally, I understand it's Tina Joemat-Pettersson's 59th birthday today, so she would probably want to see herself take that position, but does she have the backing? Nomvula Mokonyane also comes with her own Smolanyana skeletons. How do we balance that out?
So I think Peterson was actually quite a surprise for everyone. No one saw that coming. She was raised from the floor, obviously. She was not part of the initial list of ballot. And so I think even the fact that she even got sufficient support, right, that she even met a threshold to be on that ballot itself is a very shocking surprise, because really it was one person that we did not see coming. But I mean, I think that she came very late into the race. I think Nomvula has really consolidated the ground. She has, of course, the fact that there are people who support Joemat-Pettersson also means that they've obviously we've seen over the past few days a shift in support and all of that. But Nomvula has been one person, in fact, who, amongst all of the people who have been nominated, has maintained, significant support from all slates and all sides of the faction. So you've got people who support Cyril Ramaphosa also supporting Nomvula, but people who support Zolim Kizo also supporting Nomvula. She's almost the one candidate in this entire nomination process, or this entire of all the candidates who actually enjoys support across the factional divide. So I don't think that Tina is going to make a huge dent in Nomvula's campaign. I don't see her unseating Nomvula. Nomvula, I think she has consolidated quite sufficient support over a long time.
So a second Deputy Secretary General position, making the top 6, now the top 7. You've already raised this point. It's again women.
Yeah.
It's again women going head to head. What does it say about this position, and why is it then that only women are contesting it?
So for me, it says a number of things. So it says 2 things. The first one, of course, is the fact that we are seeing consistently that the ANC simply does not trust women with the engine of being engines of the organization. You've had men throughout being secretary generals of the ANC. Women have always deputized, right? From Jessie Duarte previously, but now it's very clear that whoever is going to be the DSG, first DSG or second DSG, is obviously going to be a woman, because it's only women contesting there. You've not had a woman secretary general. You've not had a woman president in the ANC. And so for me, that is an indictment on the ANC, of course, but it's also very telling of where the ANC thinks the role of women ought to be. Why is it? I mean, take, for example, Nomvula Mokonyane, right? Whatever her issues are, and we know her issues in government and so on, she's not a clean person, right? She's got a lot of things that are questionable morally. But Nomvula Mokonyane is the most senior person in that entire list. She's actually really the most senior person. She has served in the ANC, NEC, the NWC, the PEC in Gauteng. She has been an MEC. She has been a premier of Gauteng, and now she's a minister, right? And she's been a minister in various cabinets. Why should Nomvula be a deputy Secretary General to Ndumiseni Ntulu, who is younger, who does not have the experience, who does not have experience that Nomvula has? And I think the fact that you take someone that's senior in terms of like being in the organization, and that person gets to be a Deputy Secretary General, and the person that you tout for as a Secretary General is someone who's junior in terms of experience and everything else, is very telling of what the ANC thinks the role of women is. But I think the second thing for me, really about this issue of a Secretary General in the ANC, is also that why did the ANC decide that there should be a second deputy secretary general? For me, it seems more like it was about accommodating factions and really just trying to manage the divisions, right, and trying to accommodate, because there absolutely is no logical explanation for why there should be a deputy secretary general. The functions of the SGO are assisted and aided by subcommittees which are comprised of members of the NEC who are based full-time in Lutuli House, right? So you've also got officers, election officers, campaigns officers, and so on, which are part of that office, and they assist in the SGO. It's actually one of the most quite well-supported offices in the ANC. Why do you need to have a second DSG? It's simply to accommodate factional interests, factional lines, and to split votes and all of that. And I think that's very unfortunate, and it also speaks to a culture of institutional fundamentalism in the ANC, and you see it not just in the party but in government as well, that the ANC has started to approach the significant challenges in South Africa as a thing that needs institutions to be resolved. So whenever there's a political problem in South Africa, you create an institution to resolve a problem. You create an institution and you duplicate functions and all of that. It's happening in government. We see a lot of that happening in government, but now we are beginning to see it in the ANC, that this institutional fundamentalism is becoming embedded in the politics.
Thank you very much, Mahlatsi Mahlatsi, giving us some insights on the gender situation in the ANC as that race hots up. And we will be back a little later to discuss what's going to happen next. And it's all going to come down to the wire in just a few hours, or at least so we hope. For Eyewitness News, I'm Lindsay Dentlinger.